In 1974, the Arecibo telescope was upgraded just in time for its 10th anniversary. Astronomer Frank Drake thought to commemorate the occasion by using Arecibo's radar to send a message to an extraterrestrial civilization. Drake pioneered the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI, and is the author of the famous Drake equation, which aims to describe the number of detectable civilizations within our galaxy. He collaborated with Carl Sagan in designing the plaques on the Pioneer spacecraft and oversaw the creation of the golden records on Voyager. Now, like the Pioneer plaques and Voyager records, the Arecibo message was ultimately a symbolic gesture. It was designed to show that we could do it and to show off the incredible power of the Arecibo telescope. However, it was also an opportunity to really think about how to actually construct a message that could be interpreted without any expectation of a common spoken language. Drake designed the message with the assistance of scientists at Cornell University as well as Arecibo. Now, despite popular myth, Carl Sagan was not involved in helping to design the message, though he certainly supported and helped promote the effort. And so, on November 16, 1974, a message was beamed to the globular cluster M13. It consists of roughly 100,000 stars and lies about 22,000 light-years away in the constellation Hercules. It was chosen because they wanted the message to reach as many stars as possible. Ideally, they would have preferred to send the message to the galactic center. Had that been the case, the signal could have passed through 1 billion stars. But the galactic center never rises overhead at Arecibo's latitude in Puerto Rico, so M13 was selected instead. The message was sent with Arecibo's megawatt transmitter. Now, a megawatt of energy isn't really a lot if it's omnidirectional, that is, if it radiates in all directions. But when concentrated into a narrow beam, it outshines the sun by a factor of 1,000,000. That's powerful enough to be detected by another Arecibo-sized antenna on the other side of the galaxy. Now, there's no reason to assume that an alien civilization should have the same concept of language as we do, but Drake was confident that anyone intelligent enough to receive the message would, by necessity, have to have an understanding of mathematics and science. That's why the signal was broadcast at a frequency of 2,380 megahertz, with occasional pulses shifted by 10 megahertz. Digitizing the signal produces a string of bits with 2 different values. By convention, we treat each bit as either a 1 or 0, but they could just as easily be an on or off, whites and blacks, or whatever these are. The message was 1,679 bits in length, and that's a special kind of number called a semi-prime. That means it can be factored into 2 prime numbers. In particular, 1679 factors into the primes 73 and 23. If the bits are arranged into 23 rows and 73 columns, the message is completely unintelligible. But if the message is instead arranged in 23 columns and 73 rows, an unmistakable message emerges. The message is broken down into 7 parts. The top part of the message are the binary representations of the numbers 1 through 10. It's meant to act as a kind of Rosetta Stone for the rest of the message. Now, if you already know how binary works, or don't care to know how binary works, feel free to skip ahead to the next part of the video. But otherwise, let's talk about how to read the first 10 numbers. The bits at the very bottom of each number are intended as markers to indicate the start of the column for the number in question. Each bit in the column above represents an increasing power of 2, starting from 0 and counting upwards. The value of the number that any combination of bits represent is calculated by adding up the values of the bits that are switched on. So for example, in the first column, the bit above the marker is on, but the rest are off. So the value of this column is 1 plus 0 plus 0, or 1. In the next column, the bottom bit is switched off, followed by a bit that's switched on, followed by a third bit switched off. So it's 0 plus 2 plus 0, or 2. The third number is 1 plus 2 plus 0, or 3, 4 is simply 4. 5 is 1 plus 0 plus 4. 6 is 0 plus 2 plus 4. And 7 is 1 plus 2 plus 4. The numbers 8 through 10 are a little trickier because only the first 4 rows could be used to express these first 10 numbers. So these numbers are represented with 2 columns. This is why the bottom marker is there to indicate where to start reading the numbers from. So the positions represent 1, 2, and 4 as above, followed by positions 8, 16, and 32. Now, writing numbers out this way might not be obvious to anyone who manages to arrange the message correctly, even if they do understand binary. But if they do figure this part out, there's a good chance they can figure out the rest of the message. The next set of numbers are 1, 6, 7, 8, and 15. These are the atomic numbers of hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus. These are the elements that ultimately make up DNA. The chemical groups that make up DNA nucleotides are defined using the same convention. So for example, 7 hydrogen atoms with 5 carbon atoms, 0 nitrogen, 1 oxygen, and 0 phosphate atoms form the compound deoxyribose, literally the D in DNA. This is followed by descriptions of adenine, thymine, and deoxyribose. Then 2 phosphate molecules are represented on either side of the message to represent their locations on the sides of the DNA double helix. Then a row of deoxyribose, cytosine, guanine, and deoxyribose, followed by another set of phosphates. The long double column underneath represents the number 4,294,441,822. In 1974, this was thought to be the number of nucleotide base pairs in the human genome. Today we know that number is closer to 3.2 billion. Oops. Surrounding this number is a graphical representation of a double helix. Hopefully, whoever receives the message will recognize the shape and understand that the message is trying to convey DNA information. The double helix converges onto a depiction of a human being. This could be the most recognizable part of the entire message, assuming whoever receives it is bipedal. On the left is a horizontal binary depiction of the number 14. This number, multiplied by the wavelength of the message, gives the height of the average American male. For example, the wavelength of the message is 126 millimeters. Multiplied by 14 gives 1.764 meters, or 5 feet 9.4 inches, or whatever units the aliens would like to measure with. To indicate that this number represents height, vertical bars appear above and below this number. I admit I wouldn't have guessed this one either. On the right is the binary representation of the number 4,292,853,750, which at the time was the best estimate of the number of human beings on planet Earth. The next section represents the solar system, with the third planet from the sun raised to indicate where the message came from. And yes, Pluto is included here as well because at the time we didn't know there was a larger Kuiper belt out there. Below that is a graphical depiction of the Arecibo dish, with a large M depicting the path of the radio beam going from the transmitter to the dish and out into space. Underneath is the binary expression of the number 2,430. When this number is multiplied by the wavelength of the message, the telescope's diameter is revealed. Horizontal dots on either side of the number hint that this is being used to describe the telescope's diameter.
But in 2001, suddenly the media paid some interest, because then something appeared that was almost impossible to overlook. Right behind me is Britain's largest radio telescope, the Chilbolton Observatory. And here it was that the greatest sensation in the crop circle history was to appear in the fields right in front of the telescope.
On the morning of 14th of August 2001, a formation was discovered which was different from any other previously seen. From the ground it looked like a tangled mess, wisps of crops spread around in no system. However, in the evening with growing shadows, a picture appeared, unmistakably that of a face. That picture represented a whole new technique, a screen technique, the same that's used for printing a picture on paper. 3 days later, the face was joined by something that looked like a data strip. Rows of counters made out of standing and flattened crop. But soon, an astonishing similarity is discovered. In 1974, the astronomer Carl Sagan composed a message that NASA sent into space from the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico. Binary figures which constituted a graphic code presenting key factors about humans and the planet we live on. 27 years later, an identical pattern appears in a crop field right in front of a similar radio telescope. However, on closer inspection, it seemed to show that the code contained some fundamental differences. Sagan's message explained our calculation system, the dominant chemical substances within the elements that create life on Earth, about our DNA code, humans' height and quantity, and that we live on the third planet in our solar system, and lastly, a sketch of our radio telescope. The message received described the same calculation system, but that silicon is most dominant in life forms in contrast to carbon. The drawing also clearly shows a humanoid figure with large head in relation to its body. It's also explained that they have an extra string in their DNA, are approximately 4 feet tall, inhabit the third, fourth and fifth planets in their solar system, and have a population of around 21.3 billion. Underneath, the telescope has been replaced by something more complex. 1 year earlier, a strange crop circle had appeared in the same place. Is this the same illustration as in the sender's code? Is this the correspondence radio telescope? If this is not an extremely clever and well-calculated joke conducted by humans, is it a serious response from an alien civilization?
The Chilbolton crop formations really gave new life to the speculations of who is behind this. Is it aliens? Where do they come from? And what is their purpose of this type of communication?
The following year, very nearly on the same day, a new picture appears that gives new force to the alien theory, this time in Crabwood, near the town of Winchester in Hampshire. Once again we see a face, but this time there is an unmistakable resemblance to something extraterrestrial. The picture also contains a print, somewhat similar to that of a CD, with something that appears to be a coded message. This formation also has a new type of design, this time with horizontal line patterns of variable thickness, similar to that of a TV picture. The message on the disc is similar to a spiral band built up of many boxes. But data expert Paul Weige manages to decipher the message.
And I had to enlarge the disc quite substantially on the computer and run some image analysis over it to make it clear so that I could see what was a standing tuft and what was flattened. And while I was doing this, I noticed that every so often there was almost a mistake in the diagram. It was like there was a tuft, where the little square tuft, it had done sort of half size. I thought that's a bit odd, and it seemed fairly regular. I was going round, and I sort of counted up, and it was sort of literally every sort of 8 bytes or whatever. And I thought, oh, 8 bytes, and you know, from the computer side, is obviously some sort of binary code. So then I did the straightforward thing. I just converted it into ASCII, which is the standard sort of computer language that you encode the alphabet in. And of course I then started to get words forming out, and I thought, oh, you know, I'm getting somewhere here. So I then did the whole thing for the whole lot, and got this message.
The message is in English and reads as follows: Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. Many have been surprised by this message. Are there aliens with such faces that we should be aware of? Or is this a picture of the sender? Does this indicate the start of actual close contact with neighbors in the universe?
My own, and this is only a hypothesis, belief about this, is that there's an effort of the extraterrestrials are gradually trying to communicate with us. A very slow process giving us a lot of time to digest the